Good evening and welcome. I'm Jean McKnight, co-chair of this Housing Plan Working Group. And this open meeting of the Needham Housing Plan Working Group is being conducted remotely, consistent with current state regulations, and is being recorded. Public access to this meeting is provided via Zoom, but does not include public participation unless required by law. And this meeting is not a hearing or a special community input type of meeting. So we will not be seeking to bring in anybody who happens to be attending, but we're glad to have your attendance. And anybody who wishes to communicate with us can submit written comments to planning@needhamma.gov with the subject line Housing Plan Working Group. First, we'll confirm that a quorum of the members of the Housing Plan Working Group are present. So when I call your name, I'll also identify your affiliation on this group, and please say something like here or present, and then I'll introduce the planning department staff. Again, I'm Jean McKnight, and I serve on the planning board, and I'm co-chair of the Housing Plan Working Group. And we have with us Emily Cooper. Emily is appointed as a citizen at large. Hello, Emily. Ed Cosgrove, who serves on our town's Board of Health.
Here.
Heidi Frail, our newly elected member of our select board. And this is Heidi's first, I think Heidi has attended our meetings previously and been on our screen, but this is her first meeting as a true member of the Housing Plan Working Group.
Welcome. Nice to be here. Thank you.
And Helen Gregory, who serves on our Council on Aging.
Here, present.
And Rhonda Spector, and Rhonda is also a citizen at large.
Here.
All right. And as other members of the housing, and we do expect other members of the Housing Plan Working Group will be joining us, and I'll introduce them as I see them. I might not interrupt whatever is the proceeding at the time to do that, but as soon as the opportunity presents itself, I'll introduce them.
Hi, Jean. No slide taken.
No slide taken.
You missed Oscar.
I missed Oscar. Oh my goodness.
No slide taken.
Oh, the third one of our large community members, Oscar Mertz, citizen at large. Okay. Of course, we welcome Oscar. Oscar and I also serve on one of the subgroups of our Housing Plan Working Group, that is our zoning subgroup. So our first item of business is to approve the minutes of our April 14th, 2022 meeting, and they were sent out. The red line is simply, I just have to edit things, so I think those are my edits on Karen's excellent minutes. So do we have a motion to accept the minutes, or is there any question or comment or need for any change to the minutes?
So move.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes. I'll call for the vote, and I'll go around by how I see people on the screen. Oscar Mertz.
Aye.
Ed Cosgrove.
Aye.
Helen Gregory.
Aye.
Rhonda Spector.
Aye.
Heidi Frail.
I'll abstain as I wasn't a member.
And Emily Cooper.
Aye.
And I want to go back one step because I said I was going to introduce our staff, but I didn't actually do it. We have with us our planning director, Lee Newman.
Present.
our community housing specialist, Karen Sunerborg,
Here.
and our assistant planner, Alexandra Klee.
Present.
Okay.
Can I
So-
just ask a question? It's hard to tell who seconded that motion. I'm taking notes.
I did. Rhonda.
Oh, Rhonda, okay. When I don't see the face, I can't. Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you for clarifying that, Karen. I wasn't quite sure myself. So now we're going to move, of course, you know that we had this very much circulated community housing survey. And we had 223 responses, which is pretty good. I mean, I would have liked 500, but we have that amount, and very, very good responses in that people had detailed suggestions beyond just checking a box. And so we'll go through that now. And Alex will put up, let me, before we start, introduce our member, Carol Fischetti. And Carol is a member of our finance committee.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Jean. Sorry, I was a few minutes late.
Welcome, Carol. And Carol, all we've done so far is to accept the minutes.
Okay.
And now we're moving on to the report on the community housing survey. The first slide that is numbered 2 lets us know what kind of outreach we did on this survey. Our staff mostly responsible for the outreach, and of course our communication organizer, I'm not sure I'm using her title right, Cindy Gonzalez, was the one who organized this and made sure all of these got out to all of these outreach opportunities. And as I said, we got 232 responses. You see there all the outreach that we did. And some of the parties we reached out to really went distributed very largely beyond just a few people, such as the League of Women Voters, to all of its membership and et cetera. So moving on then to the first question. And I think what I'll do is, rather than just leaving everything to the end, give people an opportunity to respond after I present the results of each question. So I assume so far as the outreach and so forth, there's no questions. But now we come to what does affordable housing mean to you? These were the responses we got. And these were open-ended questions, were they not, Karen?
Yes.
Yeah, so people wrote this out themselves. And there were many responses, but Karen made the effort to take those responses and choose those that seemed to be reflective of a large number of responses. Am I putting that right, Karen?
Yes, I tried to figure out to categorize kind of in general the comments into various categories, and using a representative a comment to reflect those kind of generally what we heard. Yeah.
So we have 2 screens with these comments, and the first is creating a more diverse community with housing options available, regardless of income, assets, age, disability, etc. And housing for individuals and families at all income levels that is within their budget. And we're talking about, what does affordable housing mean to you? And Needham, and one respondent noted that Needham has historically had barriers to lower income, racially diverse groups, and it's time to remedy past practices, create significant levels of affordable and subsidized housing. And people want seniors to be able to afford to stay in their homes, or at least stay in the community in housing that is suitable to their needs. And we want to make sure that there's housing for those who grew up in the town and want them to be able to afford to remain in the community, those young adults, those young families. And just thinking of a salary that a person might, be in a service industry and what they might earn, or people who might be working in our town, that we want affordable housing to means to many respondents, housing that a family can't afford on a one-person salary of less than $100,000. So we'll move on to the second screen, and then we can go back to any of these. So if we just move on to the second page. So also housing that workers can comfortably afford, including municipal workers. Affordable housing means having smaller housing units for purchase and rent, and that are below market rate. For example, rents of less than $1,000 a month, people would consider affordable. And this definition, which is similar to what's in various statutes and regulations, housing for households with incomes at or below 80% of area median in income. And some comments offered that 100% to 125% of area median in income, and even up to 150% of area median income. And those incomes, particularly 100 to 125%, is often referred to as workforce housing. And housing that costs no more than 30% of household income. And again, that very much comes from programs and regulations that if a housing unit is to be considered affordable under, for example, General Laws Chapter 40B, it's a household having an income of at or below 80% of median income shouldn't have to pay more than 30% of their income for rent. And this is a direct quote, and because this is meaningful to all of us. It means, affordable housing means I can stay in Needham. So does anyone want to comment on these definitions of affordable housing? Are they meaningful? If we were to, for example, put anything about this in our housing plan, would it be, a good expression of what people mean by affordable housing? Any comments, questions?
So, Jean,
Yes.
do you, in all these categories, which you kind of looked at all of,
Excuse me, anybody who asks a question or makes a comment, will you please say your name so people know who is speaking?
Sure. Carol Fischetti from the Finance Committee.
Yes.
Do you have a sense for kind of in each one of these statements or categories, what % of the respondents felt this way?
No.
So, you can get a sense of it was a majority of the respondents, one respondent.
Karen,
I'm happy to address.
Respond to that.
This was not a scientific review of comments. There are a couple hundred comments.
Okay.
So I went through and I basically took notes on the ones that were most often offered. So, they're typically certainly several people kind of talked about, offered them pretty close to what's here. And there are some good comments that were, people made. There was only one or two comments, but these were the ones that seemed to be most frequently brought up. But there's
Okay.
no specific numbers attached to them or whatever.
And as we go forward in the presentation, we will come to those where we have percentages and exact numbers. Yeah. All right, shall we move on, or is there any other? Oh, yes.
This is Rhonda.
Rhonda.
I guess it's one of those situations where I think we need to look at this as a group and decide how to present in the report what we mean by affordable housing. I think we need to decide which of these things are the things that are our goals,
Mhm.
and how we mean to achieve that.
And I know that in the drafts, in the work that Karen has done thus far, which is preparatory to drafting the entire housing plan, she has very carefully put in the standards that I referred to as those that are in the regulations and so forth, with incomes at or below these figures, housing that costs more than 30% of household income.
Right.
But Karen, do you think reflecting these more not qualitative, but not quantitative, but qualitative ideas is something we would do?
I mean, let me just throw it in. I think we've defined it as how one defines affordable housing. But for example, housing that workers can comfortably afford, including municipal workers. Well, is one of the goals of this group to find housing that's going to be affordable to the teachers and the firefighters and the police officers that live in this town? I don't know the answer. To me, that would be a potential goal of the housing plan.
Yeah,
But-
can I address that? I mean,
Yeah.
these are just representative comments on open-ended questions. And, if anybody wants to go back in and kind of, add, subtract, tweak, I'm fine with that. The issue of goals, aspirational goals, we're hopefully going to get to in the meeting next. And certainly these kinds of issues can be brought up then when we get to it. But these aren't reflective of goals. It's just reflective of comments that people made to answer a question in the survey.
And I see Natasha Espada raising her hand. And first of all, I want to make sure that I introduce you, Natasha.
Oh, thank you.
Because you came into the minute a little.
Yeah, I apologize.
And Natasha serves on the planning board, and with me is a co-chair of this housing plan working group. So Natasha.
Yeah, thank you, Jean. And my recommendation is that I think the goal for tonight's meeting is to go through the responses of this survey and then spend a good chunk of time on the aspirational housing goals that we want for this. So as Rhonda was talking about, so maybe, Jean, we should just go through all of this, get some feedback on what we think, and then really focus on the goals, because I just want to, for one quick second, I just want to talk about the process. Jean and I, as Jean just mentioned, we're co-chairs of the planning board for this, but I think that the work is part of the board. I mean, this group, this committee is going to be doing all of this work, including the goals. And it's going to be our responsibility to figure out how we want to move this. Karen, who works, I think, Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, you work part-time for the town, but you do consulting for all different towns in Massachusetts, creating structure for these plans. But the plan's going to be unique to Needham. And I think I would like to spend a lot of the meeting going through, what did we hear from the community? What did we hear from the survey? Do we think that that's a direction? And what are the goals that we want? Because that's really, I think that this committee, the responsibility is to put together these goals, work, and have Karen be able to take all this information, structure it, and have us contribute to it as well. And so that by the end of the year, this our work with this committee and with the community and everything is going to shape what this is. So I'd rather go, and maybe Jean, you think differently, but I'd rather just go through the survey really quickly, get some feedback, and just focus on the goals.
Great.
I will. I'll try to move it quick because you have to be aware of, you can't have a meeting going on hours after hours. So I thought I did see another hand raised, but perhaps that person decided, when you have the screen, you can only see four faces listed on the side. So if any,
I'll check for you, Jean. I don't see any other hands right now.
Okay, so let's move on to question 2, which and this was one where respondents were asked to rank the importance of affordable housing to the Needham community from a low of 1, not important, to a high of 10. And it's a fairly high response here, 7.1. So, okay, so that's pretty clear, I think. Should we move on to question 3? And here is what the respondents thought were reasonable housing goals. And the word aspirational was used, and there are 2 pages to be focused on this. And this again, where people wrote out what their thoughts were. This was not quantitative. And same thing, Karen summarized to try to pick the things that represented a number of responses. So, encourage development to promote and preserve a multi-generation and diverse community. Similar words that people used before too, diverse and all age groups. Increase the aspirational goal, increase housing supply and diversity of housing types. Provide housing options for people at all income levels at prices they can afford, and create housing for Needham's workforce. Again, and make sure there's adequate housing for seniors and those with disabilities. Promote more and higher quality subsidized housing. And it may be people are thinking of the need for public housing to be renovated, which of course we all know it badly needs. So, and here's a respondent who really got into the sort of the regulations. This might have been my response. I don't know, but increase subsidized housing inventory. No, I don't think it was, but it's a very good one, I think. To 15%, the SHI threshold to 15%, and others suggested 20 and 25%. Now, the subsidized housing inventory, as we've
Next slide, Alex.
Excuse me?
Alex,
Next
next slide.
slide. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, move on. Yeah. The SHI is a state agency, DHCD tool, and it counts all rental units that are in 40B developments. But still, to increase such units, have them counted in the SHI was an express goal. But and then the second part of that focuses on the current number of actual affordable units. If you count those units, we're at 6.2%. We're talking about units that actually are restricted. They have to be rented. They have to be sold or resold to households at or below a certain income. 6.2%. Let's double it to 12.5 is the response here. Taking another goal in the next bullet point is to maintain our 10% SHI level. Well, why wouldn't we maintain it? Well, we wouldn't maintain it if a lot more housing is built, because it's 10% of all our housing units. And all those new housing units had no affordable units. It's possible we could go down to 9%, something like that. But we have tools to make sure we don't do that, but maintain 10% SHI level. And then create more single family ownership units for middle income residents. the kind of housing that existed in Needham in decades past. Add, in the fourth bullet point, add one very specific goal, add 1,000 units of multifamily housing that includes a percentage of affordable units. And some suggested adding 2,000 or even 3,000 units of, actually this says affordable housing, and I'm not sure if what was meant was multifamily housing.
No, affordable.
Affordable, okay. So that's in even high, because of course 1,000 units of multifamily housing might only include a certain percentage of affordable units. So control high-end gentrification and preserve Needham's historic charm. And I'm not sure if that's going to a concern about tear downs, it possibly is. And then ensure that current residents do not get priced out of the community. An emphasis on allowing people to continue to live here throughout their lives, and don't get priced out, current residents. And people entering different stages of life might need different housing, they're not priced out. So question 4, so I don't know if those were, as I said before, those were sort of non-quantitative answers that went more toward specific goals rather than more aspirational goals. So I wonder if anybody has a comment on that before I move on to question 4. All right, well, here we get to what was the percentage of response? Question 4, what do you think are the greatest challenges in producing and preserving housing affordability and diversity in Needham? So number 1, the dark blue bar, the second bar, high costs of land and construction. We know there's a lot of factors that contribute to that, but it certainly is a fact that is a challenge. Then interesting that the second identified item with almost 45% of respondents was lack of support, political will. And people were allowed to pick 3. So, people could have picked any one of these 3. Any 3 of these 9, I guess. There are 8, and then people could choose all of the above or say other and specify what they meant. So what we have, the third one, it also goes to the high cost of land. It's limited developable property. And that's the orange bar there, which has about 40% of the respondents. So these are the challenges. We have to think of how to address them, but those are the ones that people identified. Question, comment, ready to move on? All right, so question 5. So what the town should focus on promoting what types of housing units in the community, and people could choose 5. So then Karen summarized by picking the top 5 and putting them on the right here. So what is it people want most? Small multi-family dwellings in more areas. And that's the light brown bar, and that had slightly over 50% of respondents. They're talking about duplexes, which we do allow, of course, in our general residence district now, triplexes and quadruplexes. So interesting that was such a popular idea. And then people support mixed use properties, and that's the orange bar. And that also had just over 50%. Mixed use properties, that is housing and commercial in the same building. And we did make efforts, about 15 years ago to zone for such housing. in our downtown and Chestnut Street and also in the Heights. And so that people would like to see that happen. We have to focus on how we can make that happen, you know? So mixed use properties. Then number 3, in a sort of fuchsia colored bar is small cottage style homes or bungalows. And I don't know if people were thinking of, you know, just here and there, or there should be clustered communities that encourage those small houses with perhaps open space, or perhaps even not. You might have a walk, you know, a location that's a walkable location, and you simply want to cluster the housing closer together and have these small single family type homes. So then another very popular choice, number 4, is accessory dwelling units. So more than 40% of the people chose accessory dwelling units. And as you may know, we do have accessory dwelling units allowed in our zoning bylaw by special permit only for family members or caretakers. So there may be a feeling that we should be broadening that. Then a lot of support, of course, for public housing redevelopment and expansion. Number 5. And that, oh yes, that's the purple bar. So that had about 40% of respondents who wanted to support that. So are there any surprises here, or anything you want to question or comment on?
Jean, this is Natasha. One of the things that I want to say is keep all of this in mind when you see who responded to the survey, because it'll be interesting to, you know, when we go to the last pages, to see, you know, how this relates to the respondents.
Very good point. I did notice that a lot of our respondents were older residents of Needham, for example.
Right, they were over 65.
Mhm.
And most of them, and they were mostly white. So just to keep in mind, like at the end, so that we can, so that's why I'm saying if we look at it holistically, the responses are interesting based on the demographic that took the survey.
Mhm. It's true. And you know what people are used to. People like to preserve the kind of housing they think we
Jean,
already have in our community, I think, to some extent.
I see
So-
Carol and Heidi
Excuse
have their
me.
hand up, Jean.
Yes, Heidi, or excuse me, I don't know who was first, but
doesn't matter.
Heidi.
Yeah, thank you, Jean. I guess I find that I'm just a little concerned about how much of this is qualitative. I think I'm just worried that it's a little hard to manage expectations and to move forward based on qualitative commentary from what we know I mean, in the context of our town population, a very, very small sample size. So I guess I'm just a little worried about how we're going to be using this information. And it's true, I just joined, so, you know.
And, well, no, you're totally right. And I think that's what we need to talk about after we go through the entire thing, because I think, and Carol, I know you had your hand up also, but I think it's really important because we cast as wide of a net as we could. You know, Cindy did. I'm just saying, Cindy, Jean helped a lot, and Karen and Lee. I didn't do as much in the sense of like trying to get it to so many different groups, but we
Sure.
still only got, and you'll see at the end, a handful, you know, small, very small percentage, and they were all, it's pretty homogenous.
Right.
The
And
group.
I'm not trying to be critical of
No, but I'm
the
saying-
number of people that we got it to, but I do find, I guess I'm worried, you know, when the questionnaire starts with asking for their definition of affordable, it just makes me a little concerned that they, you know, we have different definitions of affordable, clearly, from just the wide range of answers there. And if that's so, then how do we constructively use this information to move forward? And should we? are we using like the official definitions, or are we going to use sort of these subjective definitions? So I just want to throw that out there.
I think that's a really good point.
You're speaking, would we use them? How would we use them in our housing plan, or to inform the strategies that we choose for our housing plan? Yeah, we have to be careful. You're right.
I agree. I see Carol had her hand up, and then Emily.
Yeah, I just wanted a clarification on first of all, even though you went like 1 to 5, the top 5, but there's a hairline difference between number 5 and number 6. And like number 7, conversion of larger, is fairly close too. So I feel like it's a wider, it's wider priorities than maybe we're suggesting. But then number 2, where it says the third bar, conversion of larger, what is that?
Oh, Karen, do you have something handy that spells out what the
conversion means you're taking larger properties and you're converting them into multiple units. So you could take larger homes, convert them into smaller apartments, for example.
Oh, okay. So somebody could sell their larger home and condoize it. Is that?
Condos or apartments.
Okay.
That would require certain zoning and et cetera. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Emily?
This may be a little premature because I know we have a few more questions to go through. I'm struck by the slide or two before where it said the second highest barrier, that this group of primarily older, primarily white folks in Needham felt was a political issue. That was the biggest, the second highest barrier was that the town, that there was politics, and not support. And I'm struck by what Heidi said, which is, I still struggle to kind of figure out what this group is moving forward, or our scope is, because I feel like we're trying to boil the ocean, and that there's just so many needs here and so many opinions and so many differences about what's affordable, what's not affordable, what does it mean, what do we want to do about it, that we're either going to be, we're going to come up with, 5 little things that we can do that will appease all the 5 groups we've identified, people who want ADUs, people who want senior housing, people who want housing that's near MBTA or something like that, but we're really not going to move the needle that much. Or we can choose to sort of to say, this is where we want to put our energy and focus on, the support of the subsidized housing inventory, or multifamily, something along those lines, because otherwise it's just, we're kind of, it's a little bit diffuse, I guess is what I'm saying. And so to your point, Natasha, yes, it's not only who answered this, but this has been a recurring theme for all of our work to date, has been, it's really been very scattershot. We'll have to see what we do with it.
And so one of the things, and that's why I brought this up about the goals, which I think we need to jump into as soon as we go through this, because we need to identify, and I'm also on the climate action plan group. We had the same conversation. It's like, it's so overwhelming. So what are the goals? There are goals that Karen took from what we did before. There are goals that some people mentioned here. There are goals that people in this committee are going to have. I think that my idea, and Jean, I don't know if you want to add to this, is that the whole purpose of this is to create a framework so that we can set goals, so that then there can be actionable items under those goals with priorities. We're not going to be able to do everything until we have those goals. And then once we have those goals, there are going to be things that are low hanging fruit, and there are going to be things that are going to be short term and long term. And I think that's the identifying that. This is, I think, and maybe Lee and Karen and Jean jump in, but I think that the whole purpose of this is to create a framework to have these goals, like then have goals with actionable items that have accountability in the future. But we're not going to be able to solve everything in 6 months to present. But if we create a really good framework, it will continue and create it, it'll kind of evolve on its own. And with knowing that we've put together a framework with accountability that will allow for that to happen.
Yes, and we have to use judgment with regard to these responses. For example, the very low response on as to special needs groups' homes. I don't think that means people are opposed to special need groups' homes. I think that it only means that they think that these other opportunities are what we really need. But for example, when you look at large multifamily, which has only a 25% response, and you compare it with mixed use properties and small multifamily, there clearly is a preference. And
But for that demographic, Jean. So that's
for
the other
that
thing, right?
demographic, true.
And I think
Okay,
Oscar had his-
Oscar had his hand raised.
No, I'll save it to the end. I mean, we just
All
need
right.
to keep going. We got 19 questions.
Yeah, I
Let's
think we
move-
should keep going
let's
because
move
we
on
don't have
then,
that much
okay?
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we're going to question 6, and this is a question I love. Locations. Location. Now whether people are, there's been an awful lot of publicity around the MBTA communities law and the guidelines and what that will mean for the town. But it's a dramatic, the number one response here is the top locations for housing development are in proximity to commuter rail. And I think the fact that we're going to have to do that anyway in order to comply with the MBTA Communities Act. I mean, it's sort of, but there we go. It seems that people do support that. And then another popular response was the number 2, the light brown bar. New housing development at existing public housing locations. And I think there is, to some extent, in the London Chambers area, there's some proposal for that. But it's interesting to see that has a relatively high response of people who'd like to see it. And then another location for housing development, the popular Town Center and Chestnut Street. And to me, that kind of goes with the idea of mixed use. So, how can we have mixed use housing in the town center and on Chestnut Street that enhances the viability of our commercial areas, that provides walk to train, which people want, but is economically viable? That's a real challenge for us. So the other answers, Highland Avenue, I think, also got a pretty good response. Business area along Highland Avenue was the next popular one, and then a few others. So interesting responses on location. Okay, to move on?
Yes.
So question 7, then we asked with regard to the locations that people chose, what kind of building sites do they want? And again, this was an open-ended question, so Karen really had to analyze these responses. So when we talked about the number 1 bullet point, on 5+ units, and this is really what people think of it as multifamily housing, and what should the building sizes be? So people are content with 5+ units near commuter rail, town center, Chestnut Street, Highland Avenue, in proximity to public housing, industrial areas, and Route 95, with some favoring 3 to 4 units. These are real opportunity areas, so it's a good response. Now, the next one, 5+ units on undeveloped land. I'm not quite sure what location people have in mind on undeveloped land, because we don't have much of it other than green space in town, town-owned facilities. But there are opportunities there for sure. I don't mean to say there are none. And then now we have the general residence that allows 2-family homes. What about allowing 3 or 4 units? Should they go there? Some support for that. And then what about our single-family districts allowing 2-family homes? And some also suggest allowing 3-family homes in our single residence districts. And this is more like a comment at the top of the next page. Anywhere that it's a McMansion, and usually people think of McMansions, not some beautiful home that was built in the 30s, but a house that was built recently to replace a small house. It's likely that 3 or 4 units could fit. Well, maybe. Then this is a style people are talking about here on the second bullet point, buildings of 3+ stories. Well, currently we generally only allow 2.5 stories when it comes to either 2-family or single-family homes, with a preference for townhouses. Although more units could likely be accommodated in commercial areas or near existing multifamily structures. 3 stories, townhouses are preferred. I'm not sure what more units would likely be accommodated in commercial areas. Maybe they mean actual multifamily, structured with 1, 2, 3 floors with flats in or near existing multifamily structures. So, and then of course, promote single-family homes for which Needham is known. Well, one might argue with that. Is Needham known as for single-family homes? Certainly the predominant amount of housing in our town are single-family homes. But that doesn't mean we don't have other styles of housing in our town. But people want us to think about that. Now here's the response of caution here. And I think perhaps the last 3 bullet points are the cautionary bullet points. The single-family homes allow only 1 to 2 units as the town, in other words, don't allow any multifamily as the town does not have school capacity for more people. And it says units, it doesn't say bedrooms. So I think they're really talking about just 1 or 2 unit structures. And then, of course, all options depend on location and parcel size. So that goes to how can we have dimensional controls that work everywhere, both for large sites, small sites, et cetera.
So Jean, I'm
Okay.
concerned a little bit about time just because we have only an hour left and
Oh my goodness.
so we
Okay.
have 19 questions. So I'm just jumping in here. Do you think we should just give like a little bit of cliff notes really quickly on the other
All right,
questions? and
I'll
people
try.
can look up
Sometimes
them
I
more
insert a
carefully?
little editorial.
No, I love it. I feel badly saying it. I just don't want to
You
run out
are
of
so
time.
right. Okay, question 8, target populations. The top one, people want served seniors. Low-income households between 50% and 80% of area median income, young families, moderate income households, those employed in Needham. So here we have a quantitative answer that's really similar to the qualitative answers that we had to the beginning questions. And then here, question 9, what strategies should we do? Number 1, support the Needham Housing Authority's plan to renovate, improve, and add to its existing low-income housing.
Alex?
Yeah, Alex, can you change it to 9? Thank you.
Yeah, now we can see those better. Okay.
Yeah,
good.
no, keep on going, Jean. This is great.
Yeah. And number 2, establish new requirements for better controlling tear down activity. This is the first we've really seen tear down expressly mentioned, I think, here in these responses. But people think it's an important strategy. Participate in the state MBTA communities initiative. Number 3, that's very positive to have that as number 3, I think. Inventory town-owned property, identify those parcels that could be used to build more housing. Restudy and amend downtown and neighborhood zoning to better facilitate multifamily housing construction and mixed-use development. All good answers. So well, those I'm sure will be strategies that we'll be studying and including in the housing plan. Number 10, and I'm just racing through it, not asking for comments or questions. And please write down, save any comments or questions you have at the end. I don't mean to leave people out here. And this is an opportunity just for additional comments on housing issues. And there's a sample of comments. Diverse community, healthy community, focused density in the town center and Needham Heights. Affordable housing must be transit accessible. People who work in Needham, teachers can't afford to live here anymore. Keep Needham pretty much the same as it is now. We have that response for we don't need change. Work regionally. Well, that goes to the MBTA Communities Act, for example. Consider moving from 1 acre to 1/2 acre zoning. That's an interesting response. And we need to plan, and this goes to capacity building here, that on the next page, to support a significant population. And we need to plan and invest in infrastructure, schools, public safety. So that speaks to planning for the infrastructure needs as well as planning for the new housing. At the statement that public housing is a public good. Keep green space and trees where possible. Restrict tear down activity, including the size of rebuilds. But Karen noted in the parentheses, others did not support limiting tear down activity. We could go into the reasons why one might support tear down activity or oppose it, but we have different points of view here. Focus more on smaller homes, opportunities for young families. And we need more housing for downsizing that, seniors and those with disabilities. Again, support the MBTA communities requirements and the Needham Housing Authority redevelopment initiatives. I'm not sure, it would take me a while to figure out what exactly is meant. Allow the free market to function by simplifying regulations. Well, it might mean we now require a special permit, allow it by right. I mean, that's something the MBTA Communities Act wants us to do. We tend to like our regulations and think they serve a good purpose, but others think they would get in the way. We need what? More density, more density, more density. So you see, you have different points of view here for sure. All right, now here we get to the demographic information that Natasha mentioned earlier, and Emily too. So most of the people who responded live in Needham. Some people work in Needham. Possibly they live and work in Needham. And then, I'm not sure what the other is. Do you own or rent? The vast majority, almost 85%, own a single family home, and another
Is that question 12?
Yeah, question 12 now. And another of these respondents, almost 85% own a single family home, and another, 7 or 8% own a condo unit. So the respondents are 90% or a little more who already own real property in our town. So that is an interesting fact. And whether that's that, it's kind of hard to live here if you don't own real property. Although we do have a lot, of rental housing, but, somehow we might not have rented it. We reached out. So the people who rent in a multifamily here is only about 3% of the respondents, the red bar at the bottom. Then how long have you lived in Needham? More than 50% of the respondents have lived here more than 20 years. But then there's a sampling of other times of period. Oh, here's the question, I do not live in Needham. It's really only about 2% of the respondents don't live in Needham. So question 14. There seemed to be a qualitative goal that we want people to be able to spend their lives here, but here we have people think they move out of Needham in the future. Yes. Well, people aren't sure. That's the biggest answer. But more people said yes than no. So that's an interesting fact. I wonder why, because most of the people who responded, as we said before, do own real property. Nevertheless, they think they'll be moving out. Now, why would you move out? Well, the biggest answer was housing and living costs are too high. And in the part of some people, 25% or so, they prefer a smaller house or a unit. But they have to move out of Needham to find it. And some need an accessible house or unit. Well, it's hard to find a building with elevators, particularly if you want to buy a condo. Here I am editorializing again. Some people just want to move to a warmer place or live in a more urban place. So those are the answers. And your age. As pointed out, we have the largest group of respondents were people 65 and over, almost 40%. And then you have a variety of ages. But still, I mean, if you took the people who are over 45, you really have a very large portion of the respondents. I wouldn't be surprised if they're 90% if you added all those bars together. So you don't really have much in the way of response from younger people. And then what kind of household do you have? A lot of families with children. In fact, the largest group are families with children of 45% who responded. And empty nest couples, people who did raise their children here, but now simply a couple. Those are the predominant responses. So again, people single who are living alone or single living with housemates, very few responded. So again, we really didn't reach the renters, I think, with this questionnaire. And then income. Well, costs a lot to live in Needham, and you see that from this. Predominantly the people who responded have more than $150,000 household income. So just about 50% have that amount of household income. And some people preferred not to answer. So I wouldn't be surprised if you ended up, putting in another 10% for the ones who didn't answer. And then the 100%, you probably end up having 80 to 90% over 100,000. Then ethnic identity, as was pointed out, the vast majority of the respondents, over 90%, are white or Caucasian. And I don't know if the respondents, I know that the percentage of Black people in our town, even with the current census, is still fairly low, something like 3%.
No, 15.
Oh, 15%?
Oh, not Black, I'm sorry. That's minority, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 15, people of color in general is 15%. And Asian and Hispanic are higher than Black. So it may be that the respondents reflect that percentage. But that clearly, most of the respondents are white. So all of this response to the survey, of course, does inform our aspirational goals. That is the next thing on the agenda. But is there, first of all, I want to make sure I want to introduce anybody who arrived while we were doing that presentation. And I think I already introduced Carol, but I haven't introduced Michael O'Brien. So he has joined us now, Michael O'Brien from our school committee. Oh, and also Marcus Nelson is with us now. Marcus Nelson, the other member of our school board, excuse me, select board. Welcome, Marcus.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, I hope Michael and Marcus, you were, a part of that, or at least had the opportunity to review that as you received it online. And so we'll move on now to the aspirational goals. And Tasha will lead that discussion. But if there's any further comment or question on the response to the survey that the staff here need to hear from you, is there anything further you want to say? All right, we'll move on to aspirational goals.
So I'm sharing my screen. Thank you, Jean. That was really great. And I'm sorry that I just wanted to make sure that we got through some of these other pieces, but you have a lot of insight and it's really appreciated.
Believe me, I really appreciate your timekeeping function here, Natasha. Thank you.
So I think that one of the main goals for tonight is to talk about these aspirational housing goals. And Karen has put together the list of goals from section 2 of the draft housing plan of the structure that we're creating that indicates that they were part of the 2007 affordable housing plan. That was a long time ago. That was like 14 years ago. So what she said is these goals are meant to be aspirational, something the town would strive for in the years ahead, as opposed to the specific strategies or the numerical goals included as part of section 3C.7 under priority housing needs. And we're going to be discussing that later in July. But in general, these goals were meant to be revisited. So this is just a starting point. And I think we should go through each one individually right now and start getting comments from everyone. There were also goals that were from the survey. And if anyone, we can revisit those as well. But I think what we want to do tonight is talk about these as this is a starting point and start kind of carving out what the goals for the 2022 housing plan are going to be. So the first one here is an overarching goal to build a stronger and deeper community. The ways in which housing efforts are carried out can help in achieving that, bringing the community together and addressing a widely shared concern about the quality of life in Needham. So is this a goal that we're still interested in keeping? And is this the right wording for this goal? And I don't know if I can see all the hands, so if someone can help me with that. I see Ed Cosgrove. Ed, are you speaking? I think you're on mute.
Yeah, no, I was just saying yes to keep that goal.
Okay, does everyone feel comfortable keeping this goal, or does anyone not feel comfortable? Okay, I see Heidi, I think.
Yeah, I guess I'm just not sure precisely what this means. Clearly, we want to build a stronger and deeper community, but I guess I'm not sure what the rest of it means. Like, as because I sort of feel like if we're going to have a goal, it should be awfully concrete, because it's hard to execute goals that are not.
None of these are
For me. So I guess the ways in which housing efforts are carried out can help achieve that. I don't know. I guess I just need some clarification about what that means.
So I don't know, Lee or Karen, if you want to explain what it means, but I was confused also.
I think that what the intent here was that by doing the housing plan and implementing various actions will help improve and build a stronger community. And that's big. That's an aspirational goal. These are not kind of numerical quantitative goals. These are we're meant to be more aspirational, and we're striving towards some kind of I don't know,
Yeah, just overarching.
I mean,
Right.
And
So-
I think, generally I would say I agree with this goal. Definitely. I just think that the wording maybe could be, I hear you about it being aspirational, but I think it could still be, there should be some middle ground between aspiration and concrete in my mind.
I agree. I see Oscar, Emily, and Rhonda. So Oscar, do you want to go first and then Emily?
Sure. I think I'm with all the comments so far. I think that's been the challenge here is that these are soft enough that you can interpret them in your own way, in a way. And I think to Heidi's point, maybe we do need to try and put more point or poignance on their wording so that they have a little bit more focus, I guess is the best word I could say, because they're broad and they're soft, and they're aspirational. So I think, and I think I would just jump in and say all four of them are fine and they're all still good. So now we got to go attack them and make them more poignant and make
Right.
them more
I agree.
specific. That's my goal. That's what I think where we are. I couldn't.
Okay. And
It takes time to do
let's
that.
do this tonight. Let's try to get as far as we can tonight. We did this with Nuari and in the same format. It was, the wording is really important. So thank you, Oscar. Emily?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of this is nuanced. These aren't really goals. This is like the guiding principles for us to do the work. And probably something we should have agreed to in the beginning of this process is sort of, this is what guides our work. I want to encourage us in part of my subgroup research. I did look around, and Natick has a really nice plan that they did in 2021, and their goals are really much more specific. They have a housing production goal. Their goals are provide, housing for seniors, right? Like that is the goal. We're going to increase housing for seniors. These are, yes, we all agree that these are things that we want to have in our community. I guess what I would say is I don't know that we need to spend a ton of time reworking every word that's in here, because I think in general, we'd say, yeah, these are good things.
Yeah.
But that's not the meat of what the work is that we need to do at hand.
Agreed. I think
We
you're
have
right.
to agree,
The
but we do
principles.
have to agree on what the goals or the vision is, or we're gonna have a tough time moving forward. I think.
Well,
I think
these are
the
pre-
intent
I-
was to really, like the Natick plan, to come up with some additional ones that kind of reflected 2022. So,
No, and I think this is why we're having this meeting. So I think this is great,
Right.
Karen. So Rhonda,
Yeah.
I see that you're.
I agree with everything that everyone's been saying, but I think these are guiding principles, and we could probably just stop them each at the first part of the sentence. We want to build a stronger, deeper community. We want to have a community with a broad socioeconomic diversity. We want, I don't know what it means to shape our own housing future. I guess that means not getting 40B pushed at us. And I just think this is just there's a lot of words and not a lot of content. And I actually find it confusing because of that. And I think that we really do need, I think it's fine to have very short, quick bullet points that are the guiding principles that lead into very specific goals that achieve those principles, that respond to those principles. And that's, whether it's senior housing, whether it's public housing, I think we need to agree on the 4 or 5 things that we want to prioritize in this housing plan, and then jump into them and say how we're going to make them happen.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah. I think that
Ed?
what these actually need is bullet points. Each one of these needs bullet points underneath them with specifics.
Yeah.
So you could keep these and then get specific for each one.
guiding
We will
principles.
I'm gonna-
achieve this by blah.
Could do that.
So so let me get everyone's comments first, and then let's just try to do something that kind of gives it a better framework, using them and then adding anything else. So I see Jean also has her hand up.
Yes. First of all, when Ed Cosgrove noted that he agreed with the first bullet point, I want to ask Ed what he understands the second sentence to mean. And I'm going to put out what I think it means. When the ways in which housing efforts are carried out, and back in 2007, there was a big focus, of course, on 40B. there's a lot involved with public meetings of the select board, the zoning board of appeals, various boards that comment on the developments, and a desire for openness and participation and listening to people. And I wonder, is that what you think is meant by that second sentence?
I think so. That's what well, wait a minute. Yeah, I think that's what I mean by that. In other words, specific.
Yeah, that's kind of what I
inputs,
thought too.
yeah.
Mm,
From various segments in the community.
yes.
And then that in turn unites us all.
Yes, and I like that. I mean, I don't know if there's other words that would express that differently, but I do like that idea that we listen to people. Even if we go with the MBTA communities by right, you're not going to allow a special permit. There still is a site plan review process, and that's going to be an open process, hearings, people have their say, conditions can be imposed that are reasonable, that sort of thing. That's what people expect in this town. So I think something in our aspirational goals that addresses that is a good idea. There are two things, there's just two things I wanted to add that I thought to aspirational goals. I wanted to add a phrase that says, we're a community that welcomes residents of all ages and stages of life. And I thought maybe putting that right in the first sentence, an overarching goal to build a stronger and deeper community that welcomes residents of all ages and stages of life. So, others may say, well, that's too specific or something, but anyway, I like that is an overarching goal. Another thing I'd like to say somewhere, and I think it is an aspirational goal, not really a strategy, is to enhance the vitality of our commercial areas by encouraging development, with walkability for commuting, shopping, services.
Hold on, can enhance the vitality of our commercial areas to?
To encourage walkability, commuting, walkability for commuting, shopping, services, socializing, and health. Maybe that's too long a list, but
No,
that
that's
was my
very good.
list.
I like that.
Walkability for commuting, shopping, services, socializing, and health. So those,
I think it's interesting. We've got ages and stages of life and socioeconomic diversity, but we don't have LGBTQ. We don't have racial diversity.
Right. Okay.
We're kind of missing a couple of important pieces.
Racial. I don't know how to write it, but I'm just trying to at least.
Yeah, right. Just get the idea there. Yeah. No, it's strange thing.
This is Carol. I would also add to that to include disabled or differently abled. I forget,
To this one or a different one?
To that one. It doesn't matter either to that one or the first bullet on the top.
Yeah, I think ultimately it goes into the first bullet, but that's okay.
Yeah, I think it's one big bullet that's just a deeper, more meaningful, more robust about diversity.
Yeah.
Well, you could just say welcomes residents, welcomes all you could say is welcomes all residents, including.
Right. I don't think we need the stronger and deeper. Just saying. I think we want to be a community that's welcoming all these different people, everybody.
Yeah, but I do think that we do have to add the all stages of life.
No, I'm not saying that. I agree.
The only thing about stronger and deeper is that, or I would almost say broader. The concern I have is that we're getting a sampling in all of these responses, and the engagement from all of our, Zooms is not
broad or deep.
A broad enough sampling. There's lots of silence, which would be interesting to tap into. I keep trying to figure out how we can get there.
So I saw Helen, excuse me, I saw Helen, our hand up for a long time and she was super patient and I don't know where she is right now.
Hey, I'm here. This is Helen.
Sorry.
And I just was going to reiterate something that I heard early on in the conversation, which for me personally, and maybe coming from where we're all coming from different places, but I'm struggling with the term at the very title of this document with just aspirational goals. Because again, to reiterate, like to me, this feels like I would change the title of the whole document because it's more, I think maybe it's just me, but I'm struggling with the concept of aspirational versus guiding principles. And I think
I think others also mentioned it. I put it down here, so we could put
Okay.
it here if everyone agrees.
Mhm.
Yes.
I like it.
Yes.
Or at this point.
And take it out further below.
I'm just gonna take all this stuff out because now we know, that was just kind of, this is the guideline for it. So this is a work, that's why I took out the Word document. I didn't do the PDF because it's a work in progress. And we still have the, we still have the original and I copied all of this down here. So I'm just gonna do a page break here. So, well, whatever, I can't find it because I'm seeing everybody's, I'm trying to do Zoom and this at the same time. So, okay, so I guess the question is the racial, ethnic, and gender diversity, do we want to include it with this? So all residents of all ages, races, ethnicities, right? Genders, or I don't know, is that how you say it? I don't know, gender, abilities, and stages of life. So stages of, it would be ages, right?
Gender identification.
Gender identification, thank you.
Do we need religion in there? I don't know. I'm not saying we do. I'm just
Yeah.
asking.
We can, if everyone
I
feels.
think it should be really
Yeah,
somewhere.
I think either we say we welcome everyone, but if we're going to make a list, we've got to like have
Gotta be
everyone on
right.
the list.
Oh, you can say stronger, deep, well, it's not a goal, right? It's a principle. So it's really to build a stronger and deeper community that welcomes all. This includes residents, so that if we miss something, this includes residents of all ages, races, ethnicities, gender identity. We can also.
You're getting the gist. We'll have to
We'll have to
wordsmith.
make everything match later.
Right.
We'll
So do we want to
wordsmith.
get rid of this?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, Ed,
it's a little milk toasty.
um,
Okay. And this one, to remain a community having broad socioeconomic diversity, and get rid of this for now.
We're not yet. To remain a community, we
Okay,
need to.
so
Yeah, I think,
B,
yeah,
right?
To be.
To
the
achieve.
results of that were clear.
I
Yeah,
see
to
Gina and
become,
Rhonda have their hands up if you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just didn't take mine down.
to become a
And this is, so
community.
I
Oh.
still have what it said before, but I'm just trying to simplify. So
yes,
to have the community shape its own housing future, or to be a community shaping its own housing future, or?
Be a community that shapes its own housing future.
This
Or
is
which shapes.
this is so specifically about having the SHI at 10%, so that
It is and it isn't, it's still got relevance, I think, because we want to get past that.
Okay. I'm just,
Okay.
what does it mean to shape your own housing future?
I don't know. I mean, I think we need to,
Yeah.
I mean, are there things that are still relevant or not? Or to assure that new housing is appropriate to its location and context?
How about insure rather than assure?
Mm-hmm. That new housing is appropriate.
Well, I
But
think
it's
that's
also
all
that it's
about-
appropriate to it, but that it gives, what about giving opportunity for new types of housing? I'm just gonna write stuff and then we can always take it out. Provide opportunity for different housing or different types of housing.
Modalities.
Yes.
What was the word?
Modalities. I don't know. types,
Housing.
modalities.
Housing types, yeah.
At different price levels.
different housing
that's-
types.
yeah.
Of different price level or of?
Yeah, of a wide range of price level or something like that, broad range.
Oh, sorry, a
Well,
broad range
this is
of
size and price.
size and price. We're gonna go back to all of them. I just want to at least like
Right,
start-
right.
enhance the vitality of our commercial areas to encourage walkability, commuting,
I think
shopping,
that's
services,
good.
socializing, and health.
I think that's good.
Very
This-
good, Gene.
Yeah, this is much better.
Yeah.
The
No
stronger
wasted
and
words.
deeper, do we want to keep stronger and deeper?
Mm-hmm.
Don't really
We
think
need
it's
to emphasize it
necessary.
because we're not there yet. Broader, maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe
I was
stronger,
thinking
deeper.
broader.
Broader?
Broader?
How about just to build a more diverse?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
So should it be to build a more diverse community that welcomes all
welcomes.
or?
Yeah. Or actually, yeah, no, it welcomes all.
Well,
You want to
that
build
is
diverse,
what I-
you want to welcome.
I think it should be welcoming to all. Because we
Mhm,
welcome
I agree.
everybody, but we might not
Yeah,
be
yeah.
welcoming.
That's
Yes.
right.
And it's a good point.
That's very good.
Carol, is that you? I can't see everyone, but I think I recognize your voices now.
About to build a more diverse and welcoming community that includes residents of all ages, just one sentence.
But it's not just ages.
Oh, it's
You
everything.
know, he
Raise the-
did mean that. Excuse me.
I'm just making one sentence, to build a more diverse and welcoming community.
That includes.
That
blah.
includes residents of all ages, races, blah, blah, blah. One sentence.
Yep. Okay.
This is so good. One sentence each. Boom.
I think it's
Bam,
better this way.
bam.
Yeah.
I
Sure.
also really like that we've changed it to guiding principles. This feels much more like a charter that
Right.
is to guide the project. Makes it
Also,
hard
we
to
all
like it.
understand it. It's always best.
Right. You're not, nobody's having to interpret anything.
Right.
It's pretty clear.
So do we feel that this is strong for now? We can, if anyone has any other comments, we can, you know, bring it back to the group, but do you feel like this is a good?
I think it's a good start.
I think
A
it's
good
great. I'd
start.
love to go spend some time to go back over all those questions, the survey,
So
and just try and unpack. What do you want to do next? Sorry. What would I say
I'm
next?
thinking right now, do we want to do, these are guiding principles. Karen had asked us to look at aspirational goals. Do we want to try to tackle those? Or not? No.
I think
Wait, this is it.
These are our
Yeah, I know.
aspirational goals.
Yeah.
We don't have
Yeah, I mean, I don't
aspirational.
see
Okay, I just want to make sure,
Guiding
Karen,
principles
I see Karen's
replaces
hand.
aspirational goal.
You know, I like the guiding principles. I think it's.
That's our
kind of-
thing. It's
Yeah.
2022.
Yeah.
It's guiding.
Okay,
It's less
I just want to make
wishy-washy.
sure because some people, you know, said those are aspirational goals. We should do the principles first. So I just want to make sure that.
No, this is good.
These are aspirational too, believe me.
That's right. I think
No,
it's
I
a-
know, I
it's
know. I just
a
wanna make
matter of
sure that-
semantics, really.
Yeah. We got
Okay.
work to
I
do.
still question the one about shaping our own housing future. I'm still not sure I understand what that one means. Otherwise, I think they're really good.
Well, I think it means it's related to having engagement, right? I mean, we got to get people engaged because we
That
know.
engages, maybe that engages.
Yeah.
Sorry,
To be an
That-
engaged community, to be an engaged community
That
That-
sounds good. Yeah.
that shapes,
I like that.
shapes its collective housing future or shapes a vision for its housing future, shapes a collective
Yeah.
vision for its housing future.
Yeah, that's better. That at least then I understand it as a principle.
Mhm.
I see Heidi had her hand up, Karen and
Sorry.
Jean. I don't know who's still up on purpose or not.
No.
Well,
So-
I,
Jump in.
I was just going to say that I do think that engage is a good addition there, and shaping the vision. I mean, I think this really needs to be an active process because in theory, once this group has made its recommendations, once we've formulated a plan, I mean, there will be work for the town and its residents to do to, possibly even change zoning to enable the vision that we envision.
Implement.
So I do think that, shaping it will be an active thing. I think it's good to have that word in there.
How about collective vision? So it's, I mean, do we need to add it if we say engage community? I guess we don't need collective vision. I mean.
I think that sounds, but there was
Yeah.
something that Heidi just mentioned that, you said
Wait.
something that it continues to shape it. What, you said a word that I thought sounded that,
Well, then you're saying we're
actively
already doing it.
shapes a
are we?
vision or something. Sorry,
If you say it continues to shape, that means we're already doing it. Are we already doing
that
it?
actively
Sounds
shape.
good, Ed. Like it.
Active.
But I mean, wasn't the whole point of that statement that we've just changed a few times to be proactive about our housing future? That we're taking proactive steps to,
Yeah.
About actively shapes.
Yeah, that's what I had written. Yep, actively shapes a vision for its housing future.
I don't have my hand up because I forgot to take it down. I really do want to say something more. I know that we rather quickly eliminated the sentence that wasn't part of bullet point number 1 about bringing the community together and addressing a widely shared concern. But I think maybe we're addressing that, which I thought of as being engaged in the process in a respectful way by the 3rd bullet point.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure Ed is okay with that eliminating of that other sentence because he seemed to like it originally.
Well, yeah, no, I think that what we've done is we've changed the impact of that whole other series of bullet points, and we've gone to a much more active, dynamic approach here, which is good because the others were kind of, I use the term wishy-washy.
Good.
They were.
They
Okay.
didn't have clarity.
We should
Then
just add,
one other comment in the original aspirational goals in bullet point number 3, there was a reference to sensitivity to larger than local considerations.
that's really
And
nice.
it seems that somewhere we should have that too. We don't actually have to talk about it, MBTA Communities Act and all that, but somewhere, where was it?
It's right
Yeah,
here.
to
so I'm
be
gonna put
engaged.
it here.
But maybe that actively shapes a vision for its housing future while being sensitive to regional housing concerns, or using the phrase we've got here, being sensitive to larger than local considerations, some phrase.
You could just say that is sensitive to the larger than local considerations or something, that is sensitive to larger than local considerations. I mean, I think that's a good
Very
thing.
much like we had it last time.
I
Okay.
like it. Because it's the NIMBY issue.
Mhm.
But it's
We have
sensitive
we have
to,
We need to
drive that.
address that.
do we say regional rather than larger than local?
Yeah, I would say.
No, I like regional, and I think the select board has
Regional
used that phrase recently
considerations.
in a positive way.
I'm just trying to keep them short so that
Yeah.
they're succinct.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
is that good?
Yep, good.
Yeah, I think we might want to add 2, just so they're consistent to the last 2.
To provide, yep. To provide,
Yeah, that's better. That's good.
so they're actions. Any other thoughts?
I think that's good.
I know we'll do some more wordsmithing, but I think in bullet point number 1, I feel like it's pretty comprehensive and probably we should just add in sexual orientation in there.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yes.
I thought gender identification doesn't cover that.
Mm,
No?
not really, I guess.
Okay.
Anyone else? Emily, Michael, I'm looking at some that we haven't heard from it. Marcus?
No, I think
Calling
this all
out people
sounds
here.
good. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the way that people have been attacking this has just been awesome. And kind of seeing this come to light the way that the guiding principles and vision statement did with Nuari, just like this is how functioning together and collaboratively and what it looks like is just fun to be a part of this. And I will definitely contribute when I see fit. I don't want to take up too much time.
Thanks, Marcus. Any other last comments for now? And maybe we can, we'll circulate this around, and if anyone has
Yeah,
any
see what kind
thoughts.
of reactions you get to this.
Mhm. And then, so we still have, Karen's gonna do the 2020 census, Lee will do next steps, and then there's other business. So I'm gonna stop sharing if that's okay with everyone. I'll send
Okay.
this over. I'll send this over to the group. And so Karen, would you like to share the census estimates?
Yeah, Alex is going to share her screen. And I'm probably going to skip some things because we're dealing with time and there are other things that have to do. But as we've mentioned in previous meetings, the 2020 census came out kind of in a limited number of data points for the congressional redistricting purposes, but most of the 2020 data didn't come out until March. As a result, we did an initial draft of the housing needs assessment that relied on the 2019 census estimates. And when the 2020 census estimates came out, we updated the information, the housing needs assessment. So we thought that maybe you'd be interested in seeing the updated information. And some of this you can kind of deal with on your own. Most of a lot of this information was available in the 2020 congressional redistricting figures. We're talking about, population growth between 2010 and 2020 of 11.1%, greater growth of those over 18 at 14% versus those under 18 at 3.7%. The 2020 census estimates added that gave us more information on the distribution of ages, and clearly the older middle age residents really kind of increased most significantly at a 29.8% rate of growth, those in the 55 to 64 age range. And then the 65 plus also increased substantially by 29.1%. Just reflecting the aging of the population. The population non-white residents increased up to now it's 50, according to the census figures, 15%, and increase of Hispanic and Latino residents, 3.8% of the population. And the census estimates offered the information that 7% of residents claimed some type of disability in 2020, and 63.7% of them were 65 years of age or older. Just kind of, okay, next slide. Go through this quickly. So just focusing on household, all the household information was from the 2020 census estimate. So while the population grew by 11.1% between 2010 and 2020, the number of households increased 6%, which basically, indicates that the households are getting larger. And that's also reflected in average household size increasing from 2.72 persons in 2010 to 2.82 persons. And just to give you some comparison, in 2019 census estimates were 2.79%. So they keep increasing. And I gotta say, this is unusual in a relatively affluent community because of the aging of population, people having fewer children, in most relatively comparable communities, you're seeing a decrease in household size. So this is kind of interesting. And then also a decrease in families. Well, family households have been increasing in Needham over the last decade. In fact, it was higher than total population growth, 11.9% increase in family households. Persons living alone decreased during that decade from 24% of all households to 17.2% of all households. And 75% of those single person households were 65 years of age or older, compared to 57% in 2010. Renter households are getting smaller, with an average of 1.9 persons in 2010 to 1.69 in 2020. Owner households are getting larger, on the other hand, from an average of 2.88 persons in 2010 to 3.03 in 2020. Just on the economic trends, next slide, Alex. The 2020 census estimated that an increase of 53% in median household income since 2010, from $114,365 to $174,707, more than twice the rate of inflation. Should mention the 2019 census estimates had a median household income of $165,000 some odd change. So we're seeing a steady increase in median income level. This data is from all the 2020 census estimates. 40% of all households had incomes of less than $50,000 in 2010, decreasing by half to 19.4%. 58.4% of households had incomes above $100,000 in 2010, compared to 70% in 2020. In 2024, 4% of all households had incomes of more than $200,000. And this, despite this kind of growing affluence, there's still a vulnerable population of residents. 10.8% of all households were estimated to have incomes of less than $35,000, including 625 households earning less than $25,000. And while the median household income of owners almost doubled from $100,732 in 2000 to $203,690 by 2020, the median income of renters stayed about the same, in the $44,000 range. So there's kind of growing income disparities in these two bullet points. Poverty is low. It's declined to 2.4% of all residents in 2020 from 3.8% in 2010. Poverty among older adults increased somewhat to 5.8% from 5.3%. Next slide. Just on housing growth, I'm not going to really go through this. This is something that this slide we really went through before, because this was based on 2020 figures that were released for congressional redistricting. I just kept it together because it still has relevance for the 2020 census information. And then on the subsidized housing inventory, the total year-round housing units was 11,047 units based on 2010 census figures of the total housing stock minus 75 seasonal or occasional units. For 2020, the total number of housing units is 11,891, and there were no identified seasonal occasional units. So that's our new denominator. So the SHI percentage decrease from 12.76% to 11.86%, based on 1,410 SHI units. And this is going to based on.
Next guest says inflation is poised to slow, and that means it's time to buy the.
Sorry.
We just received word from DHCD that they removed 16 units that were part of the 1180 Great Plain Avenue project from the SHI, which brings the total number of units to 1,394 units and 11.72%. Still a pretty good cushion above the 10% level. And just to mention that SHI includes 756 market rental units at this point, or 47% as part of 40B projects compared to 738 actually affordable ones. And the SHI percentage would be 6.2% without any market rate units. And then next slide, just on occupancy trends. This is based largely on the 2020 census estimates again. Of the occupied units, 84.5% were owner occupied, and remaining units, 15.5% were rental units. Now, while the total number of housing units, the 11,891 units, is actually not far off when you looked at the permitting activity. There was actually an increase. Hold on a minute. Go back. There were the growth between 2010 and 2020 based on the 20 census includes about 769 total units. If you looked at permitting activity, we have a total of 720 new units. That 49 unit discrepancy is actually pretty good because there are often discrepancies between building permit data and census data. However, when you get down to the census information on the balance of owner-occupied properties versus renter-occupied properties, or multifamily units versus single-family units, the census information is way off. We're trying to get some more information about, protocols for reporting permitting activity. Clearly, it's somewhat discouraging to see such discrepancies. For example, data indicates an increase of 450 owner-occupied units between 2010 and 2020, and a 26-unit loss of rental units. Given teardown activity, the net new single-family homes built between 2010 and 2020 was, really, was it something? It was, I can't see from the 19 units. And then on the other hand, the actual numbers for rental units are off too. We're wondering, reporting issues related to the kind of net new units based on teardown activity, and also is it just the reverse of the data being instead of predominantly single family, it should be predominantly multifamily, and where there's some reversal. Anyway, these discrepancies are more than what you'd expect. Vacancy rates are low, 2.6% for rentals and 1.0% for home ownership. Single family detached dwellings remain at about 82% of all units, with a reported net increase of 327 units. Once again, overestimating such development. Loss of 135 units in 2 to 4 unit structures between 2010 and 2020, according to 2020 census estimates. A net increase of 57 units in 5 to 9 unit structures, and a 211 units in structures of 10 more units, underestimating actual multifamily housing development that based on permitting, we were saying we've documented 666 units in multifamily properties. So that was kind of discouraging. And then the next slide is kind of major cost trends. The 2020 census estimates have a median sales price of $900,200 for owner occupied properties. And that includes both, single family homes, owner occupied 2-family homes, and condominium units. Median single family house value, according to Banker and Tradesman, as of the end of 2021 was $1.29 million. It's down just a bit from $1.3 million in September 2021, which was reported in the initial draft of the housing needs assessment. The 2020 census estimate offered a median gross rent of $1,604, but this is skewed on the low end because 37% of rental units are subsidized. Affordability gap was $482 based on the difference between the median price single family home of $1.29 million and what a median income earning household at now the $174,707 income could afford, or $808,000, and up considerably from 2014. And if you look at the 80% of area median income limit, looking at the average household size of 3 with a median with a income of $90,950,000, the gap increases to $918,500, up again considerably from 2014. And then I think we're up to the last slide, Alex, which is just basically what we provided before, but I updated the 2021 median house prices and looking at it across other communities, and basically kind of the similar scenario between fall off during the recession and a major kind of resurgence of housing values after that. So that's kind of trying to go through that very quickly, kind of in a nutshell. The major surprise was how much I think income increased, and that household sizes continue to increase, and that the imbalance between occupancy and in types of structure was not corrected in the 2020 census estimate and continues to be an issue. That's it.
Any thoughts or comments?
Well, doesn't it make sense that if our average house prices jumped in 11 years, doubled average median single family home, then obviously the incomes to be able to afford that are going to jump dramatically. So
Absolutely.
we're just showing a huge spike in becoming an affluent community.
That's right.
So yeah, no question we have disparity.
That's right. That's right.
Jean, I see that your hand is up.
Yep. The surprisingly low number for persons living alone. To all the people who live in the independent living apartments at North Hill and in the new building behind Wingate, that kind of senior housing, are they counted as congregate housing, or are they considered living alone if they're a single household?
They're under group quarters.
Group quarters, yeah. So in fact, there are a lot of people who are living alone, but they're living in places that provide services for them.
That's a good point.
But we do have quite a lot of that in Needham. It's not counted apparently.
Yeah, and there's in the housing needs assessment, there's a reference on the group home population. Because it's not only seniors, it's also students.
Can we have that added to our list? That would be good to have.
Have what?
have that added to our statistics. So we
It
have
is.
group homes. It's in that.
It's in the housing needs assessment. I didn't do.
You didn't
include it in
summarize it.
PowerPoint, but it's in the housing needs assessment.
Okay.
I updated it.
So with that, Lee, do you want to kind of say next steps and talk about, you know, what we need to do in the next meetings to be able to contribute to the.
Sure. Alex,
Awesome.
I'd like you to, if you don't mind, to put up just the schedule, the timeline, I think. So sure. The next meeting, we're looking forward actually to hearing all the subcommittee reports. Alex has been busy scheduling all those meetings, and I understand that everybody's been pretty productive, and I've received some of the minutes from the group. So I'm very interested in hearing what recommendations come out of those subgroups. So at the meeting on June 9th, the plan is to have everybody from the individual subgroups present to the entire group what your findings are, what your recommendations are, any strategies that you've identified that you think are appropriate to be incorporated into the plan, and to present that to the full group. And the other item we're going to have on the agenda is we've invited Reg Foster from the Needham Housing Authority to come in and make a brief presentation on the Needham Housing Authority's, building and preservation and site development planning project to date, and to give us some feedback in terms of how he thinks this group can be supportive of their initiative, and what kinds of strategies or objectives he would like to see incorporated in our planning efforts to reinforce the work of the Housing Authority. And so that meeting is on June the 9th. And then the meeting after that, we're hoping that the final MBTA guidelines will be out. And we'll be able to share the final recommendations that are coming out of those guidelines, with an effort, of helping you frame your recommendations in terms of how this group what kind of strategies this group wants to make recommendations on in terms of reinforcing the guidelines and the objectives that are called out in that report. And then also at that meeting, I think, in a similar way to the discussion that Natasha led tonight, and a timeline to look at our strategic planning objectives and our goal and the actual specific goals that this group has that they want to see incorporated in that plan. So the idea, I think, at that point in the planning process is to have had these community meetings and have gotten input on people's goals and objectives, strategies that have been identified more broadly, strategies that are coming out of the working group, groups that were created, and then taking basically the goals, the overarching goals that you agreed on tonight, the goals and the strategies that you identify, I think, on the 28th, and having Karen try to focus that into a draft plan, which addresses all those areas and consensus points that this group has reached over the month of August, and then to come back to you with a draft that you can then just review, dissect, modify, change to make sure that it accurately reflects this group's goals, this group's agreed upon strategies. And that's what's really, I think, planned at the meeting in September. And then if we're ready to go forward with a community meeting at the end of September, to present our plan, get their feedback, and then at a meeting in October to make any adjustments to that plan this group feels is warranted.
Thanks, Lee. And I just want to let everyone know this might take some work for you to review all of this outside of this meeting, so that when we meet, we make it really productive and can have really good conversations, because I think it's an aggressive schedule, but we need to have a plan, and we want to make sure that we have everyone's input and that everyone really reviews things before the meeting so that we can maximize our time here. I see Jean and Oscar have their hands up.
Oscar, do you want to go first? I have two specific things that I need to talk about that
Okay, so I would just like to ask if that we can find a time to do what we really wanted to do tonight, which was to go through the survey and come up with brainstorming of how we're going to extract from that the various points that will help us shape goals. I'm not being very clear, but I think the point is there's a lot of information that we all heard in the survey, and how can we as a group come to an understanding of what we want to extract and use for our purposes. I think isn't that something we need to do? I'm right.
Well, the goal review, I think I had on the calendar for July the 28th, but certainly, yes, that was what we'd plan to do on the 28th.
Okay, so that's a combination of goal reviews, but it's also interpreting what we've heard from the survey. I guess you're saying it's all
Yes.
going to brought together. Okay.
I see, Karen, I see your hand shaking.
Yeah,
and
well,
Heidi and Jean also.
Let me just, on Oscar's point, we, have tried to do a, fairly robust community process, trying to get perspectives from the wider community. But we have input from the poll, from the public education listening session. We have input from the community housing workshop, and we have input from a survey. We know that this is not scientific information. We know it's largely anecdotal. It gives the process some credibility of trying to reach out. I think with all those points, each of the subgroups should be thoughtful about the input that we have received. But I don't know if we need to do a shot-by-shot analysis of everything that we've been told, and having to dot the I's and cross the T's based on all the input. But each subgroup should be cognizant of what input we received today.
And I see, Jean, your hand has been up for a while, and then Heidi.
Yes, I have two important things to discuss that go to our next steps. The zoning subgroup was formed as a 3-member group several months ago, and we've had 3 meetings, meeting March, April, and May. Just ahead of our May meeting, and the 3 members were myself, Oscar Mertz, and Ed Scheidler, who serves on our town's housing authority. And Ed told us that he could not continue on the zoning subgroup. He's on the search committee for to hire a new executive director, and that's taking a lot of his time. And of course, the housing authority is also engaged in its planning for its redevelopment and rehabilitation project over and above all the work it does, on maintenance and tenant needs. He's just feeling overworked. So he dropped out at the last meeting. It was just Oscar and me. I think that the zoning subgroup really is tasked with coming up with strategies to implement a lot of what our goals are. And not only that, but strategies to carry out the MBTA Communities Act. Although we won't know for sure what the guidelines are until July, we're going to have to start working on that right away and make some suppositions about the guidelines, the final guidelines. So this being what I think is very important work that will inform our final plan, we really feel we need at least one, maybe 3 new members. And
Heidi's saying this is her.
Can I join your group?
Yes, you certainly can, Heidi. We would be delighted to have you.
Awesome.
And it would be good if people do really feel they can do this. I know people have talked about a steering committee. I'm going to talk about that too. But if there are others here who think they can join us, and we've been meeting once a month for about 2-hour meetings. We've been meeting in the middle of the day, although we'll try to be flexible to accommodate new members on the time of day and the day of the week. But we only have met once a month. Is there another volunteer besides Heidi?
Well, Jean, I'm interested. I don't have much time right now, but I'm interested. So maybe if you send it out to the entire group and say, this is when we're meeting, if people are available, they might be able to jump in, especially if it's middle of the day and they're having lunch, because I think it's important. But I mean, again, we only have until June 9th and it's May 26th. So it's a short amount of time,
Okay.
right?
Well, could we appoint, I mean, so this is a committee of the town, and we have to have public meetings and everything. I think we should go for the formality of voting to to approve Heidi's membership in the zoning subgroup. And if we're going to take like maybe others will want to later, but we'll hear later, could we vote to authorize, I guess, me to say, okay, you're a member. How do we do that without having to make that be the subject of our meeting in June?
I moved to make Jean in charge of the zoning subgroup to allow anyone who would like to attend the meetings, the last final meetings before June 9th, to participate.
Is there a second?
Second, this is Helen.
All right, then, do we have a roll call vote on that? I'll go down the list, a paper list now, because I can't see everybody. Natasha Espada.
Aye.
Emily Cooper. Is Emily still with us?
I don't see her here.
Okay, Cara Fischetti.
Sorry, yes.
Heidi Frail.
Yes.
Helen Gregory.
Yes.
Oscar Mertz.
Yes.
Marcus Nelson.
Yes.
And Rhonda Spector.
Yes.
All right, and then could we also move
And
to
you, the chair,
right now?
Jean,
Are we? Oh, what was that?
and you.
Oh,
Jean.
and I vote yes. Thank you. And so does that kind of implicitly endorse Heidi, or do we want to vote expressly for Heidi? We're okay. We're okay.
That motion includes Heidi as part of it, and well, if
All
anyone
right.
has any opposition, please, let us know.
Okay. So then the other thing that I don't want to forget to discuss is at our prior meeting, we introduced a discussion of, do we need a steering committee? And we had some technical difficulties at that meeting. And it was thought that although we introduced the subject, perhaps because of the technical difficulties and not everyone being able or finding their way to Zoom in again, that people who wanted to have something to say about that had not had the opportunity to speak. So I want to give anyone who feels that at this stage in our process, we need more than these three subgroups reporting on the particular strategies, that we need a steering committee. And I do want to note that throughout this process, we have had what I was often called in other committees, the chair vice chair meetings. Only in our case, it's the co-chair meetings. So Natasha and I meet at least once a month with the staff, with Lee, with Karen, with Alex, and sometimes Cindy Gonzalez is joining us to talk about outreach. And that, to guide the agenda and decide what our next steps are. So I must admit, it seems like we're operating as kind of a steering committee in that capacity. So if we need another committee to assist in the final preparation of the housing plan?
Well, Jean, can I add something also really quickly? That
Yes.
We're not really talking about anything that you haven't seen here. And I think that personally, I would rather have everyone's opinion about the agenda and about everything else as a larger group than just have one other person join us to do just administrative things. But we want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable. I see Heidi, I don't know if your hand is still up on purpose, and I see Rhonda's hand also.
Well, my hand is up on purpose.
Okay, I
wanted
wasn't
to
sure
say
if it was
something else,
down
but
yet.
I
Okay.
would like to just say that, in joining this group, I think up until this meeting, though I've been watching and attending, but not, participating really. I was a little concerned that there wasn't a steering group, because it didn't feel to me like there was I didn't understand the mission of the group, which, maybe because I wasn't on it from the beginning. I do feel a good deal better after this evening and the development of these principles, and sort of understanding better what our job is and how we're deciding to get there. So I think if it, continues like this, I feel a bit better about it now that we're making some progress on how we're getting to the work.
Thank you. And I see Rhonda also has.
Yeah, I feel I feel the same way. I think, Natasha, what you took us through, and everyone sort of brainstorming and editing the document and working on what this group wants it to look like, as opposed to feeling like we're getting, it feels like we've spent a lot of time getting information in, and I understand some of it, but I also think some of it's been, I think exactly the same. I think it would have been important for us to have sort of set these goals out earlier, and I'm glad we've done it, but it feels like we've kind of taken a long time to get here. And I hope that going forward, we have more brainstorming sessions like that, where we go through and we really all together come up with what's important to us and what our strategic, what the strategic mission of the plan is going to be, and what the plan is going to look like, and not sort of take, I thought, taking those principles today and making them ours was really important. And that's the stuff, more of that working group stuff and a little bit less of the reporting out. I feel like we spent a lot of today. The most important thing we did today was that brainstorming session. And we've heard a lot of things that, the report of the survey, and it's just been a lot of that. And I don't feel like we've progressed as quickly as we did today with just going through that one piece. So I don't know if that's however other people feel as well, but that felt very productive, and getting us all together and thinking together was good.
Yeah, and if I could just add, because the original reason that I had my hand up was that Oscar had mentioned going through the survey in greater detail, and while I think the survey is interesting, I guess I would just say that it would be my preference personally to let the survey and all the outreach inform our decisions, but not be the basis for those decisions, because it's a very, very small sample in each case, whether it's the Zoom working group or the community survey. It just seems too small to have it be the foundation of our concrete goals. So I'd rather have that sort of work the other way around, which is to say, I think we generally know what the goals need to be and the steps are, and we use the community input to inform those, but not to form them.
And so what I'm hearing is that having brainstorming sessions and kind of going through things and getting everyone's input at the meetings is a higher priority. Maybe we go more through the cliff notes of some of the items that we've received since the last meeting, but spending more time having conversations to come up with goals and understanding the, everyone's input on the structure and the information that is going to be creating this housing plan is more important. That's great.
I think it is. It's
feedback.
about shaping the content and guiding the content. And you're right, Heidi. I think that's that's my interpretation too, that the survey, we're all going to extract from what we all know, basically the gist of what we're hearing. But I guess I'm we will get there to the consensus of what we're all extracting and how we're all going to have it inform us all. And that's, so it'll be infused through us into these working sessions. And I agree that was a very beneficial effort today with the brainstorming.
I think that's great. And I think in general, I just want to make sure that I know we send a lot of things out, and I think going through it and making sure, we do it so that we make sure that everyone's reading it. But if we're doing less of that, which is completely the right way to go, then everybody has to do a little bit of homework before the meetings so that then we can spend the time working through things. So, so thank you all for coming today. I think it was, for me, it was like a big, a lot of input and kind of a big next step. And so I want to thank everyone. And I think if I'd like to move to adjourn the meeting,
And
and
Natasha, if
unless
I could just
anyone
say-
else has anything else.
If I could just say one thing, I didn't get quite to it in my next steps. I just want to
Okay.
remind everybody that on July the 15th, we legally have to move off of the Zoom format. So we're going to start in-person meetings. And then I think we're planning on probably running this as a hybrid meeting. But I just want you to be aware of that. So the next meeting in June, the first meeting in June will still be hybrid, but once we're in July, we'll be in-person meetings.
Hybrid meeting, right?
A hybrid meeting, yes,
Okay.
but a quorum has to be in person, depending upon
Right.
the regulations the select board adopts.
And Lee would be
Quorum in the chair.
likely to meet in the Charles River room of the Public Service Administration Building on Dedham Ave.
I'm not sure about that. I'm working out the logistics yet about how we're gonna manage it. Whether we'll be at Town Hall or at Powers or at PSAB, it's not clear to me yet. More to follow.
Yeah, Thursday nights, I think that room is usually taken with CBA and conservation. We don't have a room yet. We'll keep you posted.
Okay, so
Hmm.
just mindful of everyone's time, and thank you again. And so I'm gonna move again to adjourn the meeting. Lee, is that- I'm not trying to get rid of everyone, but I feel like our work is done for tonight. Let's keep on going. We're really excited for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Who seconded?
So I
Wanda?
second it.
We'll all second it.
So do I need to do a roll call?
I suppose so. Natasha Spada,
Aye.
Emily Cooper.
She's not here anymore.
Oh, that's right. She's early. She left early. Ed Cosgrove,
Aye.
Carol Fischetti,
Yes.
Heidi Frail,
Yes.
Helen Gregory,
Yes.
Oscar Mertz,
Aye.
Marcus Nelson,
Yes.
Michael O'Brien,
Aye.
Rhonda Spector,
Yes,
and I am I. So we are adjourned.
thank you.
Thank you
Good
all.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Night.